India's carbon credit trading scheme regulates 490 entities, forcing heavy industries to navigate emissions intensity, ESG ratings, and compliance risks. To put this into perspective, we have Saurabh Trivedi of IEEFA. Welcome, Saurabh. So, how will India's CCTS affect ESG ratings for heavy industrial firms?
Hello, Sess, and hello, viewers. Thanks for having me. So it's a important question, actually. Um, so the CCTS is likely to sharpen the ESG assessments rather than creating an entirely new source of emissions information. Because India's listed companies already report emissions through the mandated business responsibility and sustainability reporting requirements. Nonetheless, the CCTS will be going to add a regulated facility level performance test, which would show how a company has performed against the government set emission intensity target. That will give ESG analysts a more objective measure of carbon risk management. However, regulatory compliance should not be confused with the ESG or climate leadership. Some companies may already have targets that are more ambitious than the initial CCTS benchmarks. A company could therefore meet its CCTS target or even earn compliance credits, while still fall behind its own decarbonization commitments. So therefore, ESG assessment should consider both regulatory performance and the credibility of the company's long-term targets, capital expenditure, and transition plans.
Just to understand this better, what does an emissions intensity model mean for high output companies?
Okay, so India has adopted an emission intensity-based emission trading scheme, which means that this system regulates emission per unit of production or output rather than placing a fixed cap on total emissions. So for a large producer, especially in industry, that means scale can work in either direction. If a facility or a plant performs better than its target, higher output can generate a larger credit surplus. If it performs worse than the given targets, the same production growth can create a larger compliance obligation. So the system does not penalize or reward growth by itself. It simply rewards cleaner production related to the intensity benchmark given to each facility.
Now, how are sectors at the moment? Which sectors face the greatest compliance risk under CCTS?
Well, the compliance risk will depend mainly on how far each facility is from its target, how quickly its production grows, and whether it has practical or technologically and commercially viable options or technology options to reduce emissions within the compliance period. So on that basis, coal-based iron and steel, integrated cement, and primary aluminum are likely to face a relatively higher risk to meet their compliance. Um, in particular, steel and cement have significant process and material related emissions. So improvements cannot always be achieved through energy efficiency alone, which is considered to be the least cost option. Similarly, primary aluminum's position will depend heavily on the carbon intensity of its electricity supply. Refineries and petrochemicals may also face meaningful compliance risk because of their complex energy, heat, and hydrogen requirements. However, this is not a uniform sector-wide assessment because efficient plants may meet or outperform their targets, while older or more emission-intensive facilities in the same sector may struggle. So the greatest compliance risk is likely to sit with high intensity facilities that have limited near-term abatement options and growing output.
So that's for those with compliance risks. How about those that are performing well? Would you have like a specific sector that we can look into for best practices?
Right now, it is a function of the targets that have been given to these facilities. If If the targets are stringent enough, then it can create issues for a lot of the facilities across the sectors. Aluminum is supposed to be mostly dependent on decarbonizing its electricity. The only issue with aluminum is that it needs a 24-hour firm supply. If that is met, then aluminum can be one of the easiest sector to decarbonize, because the material and the process related emission reduction risk is lesser in aluminum as compared to the iron and steel or cement that I stated earlier.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, Rob.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Ses.
Once again, that was Rob Trivedi, lead specialist for sustainable finance and carbon markets in South Asia at IEEFA. For more news, visit esgbusiness.com.